I've done a couple of videos in the past and I've talked about communication, and I've spoken a bit about how communication can solve a lot of the problems that you're going to have as someone new to being self-employed, irrespective of what trade it is you choose to do. The background I'm from is obviously window cleaning, which, let's be honest, as an industry in the past, yeah, fine, it's got more professional as time's gone by. There's no question about it, but there is still a stigma, I think, attached to window cleaners that, we're not known for being the most reliable. We're not known for being the most communicative of businesses, etc. Most people I speak to, for example, when I canvass on the door, they say they've got a window cleaner. And I ask them, all right, who does your windows? I might know him. And they can't give me a straight answer. So clearly, one of two things has happened here. It's entirely possible, three, to be fair. Either, the window cleaner doesn't communicate, so, doesn't interact with the customer enough for them to know the name. The customer might not be interested. That's fair enough also. But it could also be a mixture of the two. But the bottom line is the more you communicate with the customer, the more rapport you can build, the more successful you're going to be. That's just my take on it. And case in point, a couple of years ago, many years ago, when I very first started out, and back in my day, I was about 2 years in to my business. I was working on my own, and I kept on having customers cancel, and I didn't really know why. And I was chatting away with my friend Mark, who was also, at the time, he was a window cleaner, and, one of the old and bold. And I sort of said to him, I says, well, I can't understand it. I says, I don't know why they're cancelling. And he says, well, have you asked them? And I was like, no, why would I ask them? Again, it goes back to, that was a fault with me. Why would I ask them? Because to be fair, in my eyes, it was easier to just, I'll replace them and we'll move on, what have you. And so Mark was, sort of said to us, says, well, have you asked them why? I says, well, no, I haven't. He says, well, you're not going to know then, are you? He says, why don't you get to the bottom of why they're cancelling? You can actually do something about it. Wise words, to be fair. And I thought, well, rather than ring the customers up that have cancelled, I said to myself, right, well, the next customer that cancels, I will ring them up and find out why. And so I did exactly that. A couple of weeks later, another customer cancels. And I sort of said to him, says, well, context, right? So this customer, we were a couple, and they lived in a bungalow, dormer bungalow, 4 sides. So it was, first floor at the front, dormer bungalow, 4 sides. And I'm quoting the customer. The gentleman's walking me around, the husband, he's walking me around, and he says, his X1Z shows me around. Cool. And I noticed that there was a side window that was down a gap about 12 inches, sort of thing, down the side of this property. And I sort of says to him, says, well, I'm probably going to have trouble reaching that one, but I can do the rest for you, no problem. And he says, oh, don't worry about that window. We've boarded it up on the inside, and obviously it's at the back of the house where no one else can see the window. We're not really bothered about it. And I was like, oh, right, mega, no drama. So I've quoted the property based on that, gone about my day. The next time I've come out, etc. About 6 months later, I've been cleaning the windows for 6 months by this point. And what's happened is that the lady, the wife, has rung me and sort of said, I'd like to say, she's texted me initially, we want to cancel. And I was like, oh, another one, right, okay, fine, I'll ring her. So I called her up and I sort of said, can I just ask why you want to cancel? It's not a problem, I just want to know why. So it wasn't a confrontational thing. It wasn't a case of me getting me back up and getting a bit antsy with them. I was frustrated, but I wanted to know a bit more about it. Why is it that these people are cancelling on me? And so she said, well, you quoted the window cleaning, etc. at 20 quid. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. she's like, well, you don't do the side window down the side of the house. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, when I spoke to your husband, when I quoted the property, I explained that we're going to have a hard time getting to that window. And he simply explained to me that you'd boarded it up on the inside and that, you know, he didn't want it done. But obviously, because the husband was working away, no communication between husband and wife occurred. And so she was like, oh, right, I'm sorry, I wasn't aware. I noticed that you didn't do it last time either. And I thought, oh, maybe you're just cutting corners and stuff. Like, I am so sorry, it's not a problem. And I was like, no, it's fine. I'm just glad we got to the bottom of it. Happy days, put the phone down. And they're customers to this day. But again, you know, yes, they're customers to this day, but they have since gained me more customers. And whether that's because I communicate or whether that's because they know that we can be trusted, etc. You know, so 8 years on, we're still doing the windows and we do several family members for them as well. But if I'd have just sort of sat back and taken that and sort of gone, oh, right, fine, okay, got a bit down, got a bit unmotivated by it, then, you know, yeah, I'm gaining customers, but I'm gaining for every two that I gain, I lose one. So you're almost going around in circles sometimes. It can get a bit demoralizing. You know, so the thing is that if you can communicate, then you're going to solve a majority of your problems. I've had it where recently actually, this past fortnight, one of my guys has gone out to clean windows, and he's not done as good a job as he could do on the sills. And so, again, usual process, sort of rang the guy up and sort of said, I understand you want to cancel. Can I ask why? And he says, well, can I be honest with you? I wasn't that impressed with the clean, the sills, etc., and all this sort of stuff. He's missed a handful of the sills. They're not great. I don't think he's done my front door. I just think it was a bit of a rush job. Now, obviously, what's happened is we've taken on a new starter this past sort of fortnight because one of my other guys has broken his leg. But the idea is that, you know, when Adam comes back, there will be more work. Well, we'll expand to be able to cope with more work. So obviously, maintaining your customer numbers is important. That's why it's even more important when you have employees that every time someone cancels, you ring up and find out why. So I spoke to the customer and said, right, well, as it happens, I'm round the corner from your house. I'll pop down and I'll take a look. And I'll give you a call back. Is that all right? And he was like, yeah, fine, no dramas. So then I've gone to the house, sort of looked at it, and to be fair, the sills weren't great. The door was missed. And I was like, right, okay, fine. So, well, I'll tell you what. So I rang the guy up, sort of thing. I said, I'm outside your house now. I can see 100%. It's not up to par. It's not up to standard. At the very least, I understand you want to cancel. At the very least, let me clean your windows and sills this time, so at least you're getting your money's worth for what you've already paid for. And if you still want to cancel, then fair enough. And so the guy sort of said, well, I wasn't very happy last time either. And so I said, right, well, can I just ask, you know, why if you weren't happy, did you not ring up and tell me about this last time? And he was like, well, I didn't really want to cause a fuss. I didn't want to get anyone into trouble, you know, and all this sort of stuff. It was just one of those. I just wasn't very happy, and I don't think, you know, you're doing a proper job. That's fair enough, right? And so, but at that point, I did say to him, says, well, if you remember at the beginning of the process when I spoke to you, I said to you, if at any point you're not happy, you need to let me know. And it's not because I'm going to come down like a ton of bricks on the lad that's done the work. Far from it. He needs educating. You only know what you know. So ultimately, if he's not doing a good enough job, I might need to spend a bit more time with him. I might need to go out with him on the tools. I might need to assist him. I might need to, get him to do the job right, you know. Because at the end of the day, if the customer's not happy, you ain't getting paid. It's as simple as that. So, you know, if I the more I know, the better it's going to be for both of us. And he was like, well, you know, I didn't want him to get into trouble and stuff like that. I says, well, you know, again, it's not a problem. If you tell me, we'll put it right. And so because I've shown that through speaking to him that he can speak to me, that I'm approachable, you know what I mean? And that I'm not going to come down like a ton of bricks on this poor lad that's gone and done the windows, what have you. I'm human, right? And there's a human edge to it. So when he turned around, he was almost like, right, okay, well, that's we'll see how we get on then, and that's fine. And so, as far as I'm concerned, when we go back to do his windows again in another 2 weeks now, then obviously, you know, all will be well, because I've taken the lad to one side. I've sort of said to him, says, look, you need to really concentrate. You really need to really do this job proper, because ultimately, if you don't, it's going to start costing me customers. And if I start losing enough customers, potentially at some point, you know, someone's going to lose the job, because if I'm losing money, I can't afford to pay you. So you need to do a spot on, a stand up job, whatever you. So yeah, end of the day, we only know what we know, don't we? And if a customer complains, you know, it's one thing to sort of, if a customer cancels, for you to get negative and sort of say, oh wow, another one gone, blah blah. If you have that mindset where you're just going to sit and say nothing and do nothing, then you're not going to reap the reward for it. I think a lot of the time when I ring customers that cancel, they're a bit surprised that I ring up, because a lot of window cleaners won't. But if I do ring up, it's almost like, you know, oh, well, you know, he actually does care. He actually does care if the lads do a good job. He does care. You know, of course I care. It's my business. It's my name on the side of the van. So, you know, if you're going to do something, if you're going to try and understand, you know, where the customer is coming from, you're going to stand out as being someone that ultimately takes what they do seriously. And I think, again, goes back to what I was saying before, a lot of window cleaners won't take what they do seriously. They see it as, you know, coin operated, do the task, collect money, go, right? And there's an element to that, 100%, but it's better to build that relationship with the customer, because they'll start asking you for gut-facious office, they'll start asking you for jet washing, they'll start asking you for other services that you may offer. And that's a sign of trust. When you get customers asking, do you do this as well? Do you do that as well? Do you do the other? They're prepared to pay you for you to solve their problem. You know what I mean? And at that point, you know your quid's in. You know you're going to win when you get people asking you for other services. So it's not just about you turning up and doing a service and then disappearing off into the ether. Before I go, it does also stagger me, the number of people, when I go canvassing with Sophia, I'm going to go canvassing in a minute. When we go canvassing, the number of people, when we knock on the door and they say, oh, I've already got window cleaner, and I sort of try and find out who does that area, you know, and they say, oh, well, I don't know his name. That person is clearly not communicating with the customer, you know, and so a lot of the time they're not very happy with the window cleaner, but they don't know who they are, and they haven't got a number to contact them on. So if you can be the guy that they are happy with, that they do trust and they do build a relationship with, then you're going to win. And we're finding that in most of the areas that we go to. So anyway, I thought this video would be a bit of an insight anyway. So if you like the content that I put out, please like and subscribe to the channel. And if you've got any future suggestions, ideas for future content, please just bang them in the comment section. And I'll see you in the next video. Keep on keeping on.